Good morning. Today is the 14th of June, the year 2010. I'm Harry Ziegler, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and others who participate in those conflicts. Today I'm here at the museum along with fellow volunteer Dr. Jack Irving. Today we have the honor and privilege of interviewing Navy Lieutenant Irving Meyer.
It's Mayor, excuse me.
Mayer, okay. Irving was a Navy lieutenant Hellcat pilot during World War II in the South Pacific. He's credited with 3 confirmed kills and was wounded twice. So we are going to spend the rest of the morning interviewing Irving on what happened during his life and his World War II experiences. Nice to have you here, Irving.
Thank you very much.
Irving, if you'd start off by saying your name and spelling it.
My name is Irving Mayer, I-R-V-I-N-G, M-A-Y-E-R.
And where were you born?
I was born in San Francisco,
What year would that have been?
1920.
1920. And did you spend much of your early life in San Francisco?
Yes, I did, till I was 9. Then I moved to Los Angeles.
And when you were in San Francisco, when did your memories start of that town living
I
there?
think at about 4 1/2 is the way I go back to, on my way to grammar school, actually kindergarten. I can remember that fairly vividly, the route I took and so on.
Can you remember the address of the home in San Francisco?
Well, the home was on like 240 Hugo Street.
Which would have been where, north, south, east, west?
Well, it would be at the northeast corner of Golden Gate Park.
Okay. So that was a nice place to grow up.
Oh, it was a great jungle to play in.
Yeah, I'll bet, with those trees and everything. Did you have, in your mother and dad, can you remember possibly how they met?
Well, they met, it's very interesting, but a long story.
We'll take it.
Okay. My grandfather moved from Romania to Hong Kong, strange, where he ran a hotel, his own hotel, and he made the money. His brother, one of 13 siblings, ran a newspaper, the Jewish newspaper of London, and he got the financing from my grandfather, who made the money in the hotel business. And so he sent my father, who was then about 17, to London to meet the family, and he stayed there a year and got used to the paper. Now, my grandfather on my mother's side was a writer on the paper, and he invited my father to his house, where of course he met my mother, and that's how they met. She came to San Francisco in 1913, and her ship was followed by a submarine, German submarine, but nothing happened, fortunately. And he wrote toward love letters, and apparently she accepted him, and he came to San Francisco, and they were married September 18th, 1917.
That's an interesting date.
9 months and a day later, my brother Kenneth was born, one of 3 siblings. Kenneth, 2 years older, Gilbert, 2 years younger, and Bert, 4 years younger. Now, they had interesting careers. Kenneth was the Dr. Spock of an early TV program called Space Patrol. He was Major Robertson. My youngest brother, Bert, had a career from 5 years old to 55 as a dancer in over 85 movies, danced with Judy Garland, and went everywhere in the world with her. And then my other brother was a an athlete, but he was a CPA actually in his career.
So you came last. Were you last in that list? You said, oh wait a minute, you were born first in 29.
Second, I was second.
Second.
Yeah, my older brother was born in 1918. Ken.
Okay.
And my next brother Gilbert was born 1922. And next brother Bert was in 1924. So there 2 years between each of us.
Your mother was busy.
She was busy.
So
she was a heck of a mom.
on your father's side, they were Romanian?
Romanian.
How about on your mother's side?
My mother's side, she was born in the corner of Russia and Lithuania.
Okay. And worked your way.
She considered herself Russian.
I see. So in your home, what language did they speak initially?
Well, they spoke Yiddish as a secret language. They never taught it to us kids. So they conversed in it and we were left in the corner. But they spoke English. My father spoke, because of his Romanian, which is a Romance language, he spoke Spanish, he spoke French, he spoke, from his Hong Kong experience, he spoke Cantonese, he spoke any language almost.
Yeah, it must have had a little Italian in there too from Romania.
Oh yeah, his best friends were Italian.
Yeah. And so your mother then spoke Russian.
She spoke Russian, she spoke Yiddish, she spoke English, and I think that was the limit of hers.
Were there pressures on the families because they were Jewish, and did that have anything to do with their mobility?
Oh yeah, she came from a shtetl where there were pogroms, where the Russian Cossacks came in and cut people up just for the fun of it. That was
Not, you're talking primarily Jewish people.
Jewish people.
Yeah. And
Yes.
was it a crime or anything to speak Yiddish in those countries? Or?
No.
It was not.
No.
Okay. So Fiddler on the Roof might be a little.
Fiddler on the Roof was very close to the place where she
historically
grew. Yes.
Would be close to how the Jewish. Was that kind of the way her village was? And
That's pretty much the way hers was.
uh-huh. Yeah, what was it? Theodore Bickel played the lead in that play.
Excuse me?
I think Theodore Bickel played
yeah.
the lead in
Yes.
that play, Fiddler on the Roof. Now, can you remember your house? What was your house like in San Francisco?
My house was a nice two-family building on 15th between Balboa and Cabrillo by the park.
And was it big enough for all the boys? Did you have to double up in rooms? And
No, we were four in one room.
4 boys in
Yeah,
one room.
boys in one.
No girls in the family?
No girls.
Just mom and dad?
Then later I got a half-sister, Sandra.
And going to school, you mentioned that, remember that. What's did you go to a Jewish school?
Oh no, this is Laguna Honda regular grammar school.
So it was a public school.
Yes.
Was there any significance there in being Jewish at those days?
At that time I didn't know it.
Didn't know it.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so that would have been what?
1924.
But then your next school would have been where?
Argonne, which was across the park when I lived at.
Could you walk back and forth then? Did you hike to school and back?
Yeah, I walked at 4.5, 5 years old by myself. I mean, it was safe to go.
Did the house have a basement where you might have had a furnace, or what was how did you heat the house? Can you remember?
The house was a very nice house, as I remember it. And we were upstairs in this.
So there was a unit downstairs and your family was upstairs?
That's right.
I see. And was there a car in the family?
A car?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1924 Studebaker.
Oh, my darn. And how long, can you remember how long that car hung around?
About 2 years.
And then it went to something else?
Oh yeah, he went through the gamut of them. My dad loved car.
And
Yeah, he had a 30 Dodge Coupe. He had a 39 Pontiac. And a Hudson somewhere in the 40s. He got my Packard while I was at sea. I had a Packard limousine, and I gave that to him. He sold it for me.
So what, had you developed any interest in sports at this point?
Well, I always played sandlot sports because if you got 4 kids, you had an instant team anyway.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I played football, baseball.
Did that carry on one of those sports into your later life?
Not really. I did that at pre-flight. I had all kinds of sports.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you had every sport.
you sure did. Now, how old were you when your family moved from San Francisco?
I was 9.
9. So 1929 was, things were starting to get kind of bad financially.
Yeah, they were bad.
Can you remember much about that in your family?
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, my parents got divorced in 1930, and so that was a blow. Then in 1932, I moved to Los Angeles with my older brother to live with my father because my mother couldn't take care of all 4 boys by herself. So she took the 2 younger ones, and 2 older ones moved to L.A. We lived on Skid Row.
Now,
Lived in a $2.40 a week hotel.
Yeah.
My father would see us every now and then.
So your family suffered from the Depression and bankruptcies?
Well, it didn't take them down, but it didn't let them go up.
So,
But my mother was resourceful. She got jobs of all types. My father was an attorney, so he was fairly well taken care of.
so when you moved to LA though, it took him a while to get established? Can you remember much about that?
Well, he was riding on they had 2 means of transportation. The Owl and the Lark were trains that crossed San Francisco to LA. And then there were ships that would go San Francisco, LA, and you'd sleep overnight. And so he used that transportation. He had clients in Los Angeles before he ever moved down there.
Well, if you said you saw your dad on occasions, who was taking care of the 2 boys in LA?
The 2 boys.
You took care of yourselves, huh?
I was 12, my brother was 14.
And so you were in high school now then, going in LA?
Well, I went to schools, grammar school. I'll give you Laguna Honda, the first one I told you, Oregon, San Francisco, Malabar, Los Angeles, Hollenbeck, then Horace Mann, junior highs, Mission High School, Hollywood High School, few reform schools, Jacob Reese.
And reform school?
Reform schools.
What was that about?
Well, that was because I played hooky.
So if you played hooky, how'd you, it was
They kicked me out of school for playing hooky. I thought that was really smart.
And how often did you have to play hooky to get kicked out?
Oh, pretty much 3 or 4 terms. So I would go to Jacob Reese and complete the semester in about 8 weeks. And so then I'd graduate and go back to Hollywood.
Now what would you do when you weren't going to school?
Just pick up the same subjects, but with more discipline.
And did you have a job of some kind to help with your brother?
I sold magazines, I sold newspapers.
You have a paper route, or did you just stand on the
I
corner?
also had a paper route at one time.
Deliver magazines like?
I tried the magazines, I'd stunk at the, I never got the brownie points, I never got the greenie points. A great disappointment.
And so, your 2
My
brothers?
paper route was 32 customers.
With a bicycle?
No, walking.
Walking with a bag. How many bags did you
Double
take?
bag
2
on.
bags.
Yeah.
Yeah. And were they pretty much in the same neighborhood, or was it kind of?
Pretty much in my neighborhood. I would say I went about 6 blocks wide.
Can you remember how much you made for each paper?
1 cent.
Penny. So you made, what, 30 cents a day?
30 cents a day,
And,
if I could collect it.
You know, from the people, you had to get it from the...
And I had to be the collector.
You had to be the collector too?
Yeah.
Okay. And your older brother, what was he doing?
The last thing, he worked in a shoe factory, and he dropped a pair of white ice skating shoes in a pool of oil, and he was fired for that. But I remember he was paid in silver dollars.
I'll be darned.
You'd go by the pay window, and this is your deal, and clink, 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 clink. You got 16 silver dollars for 2 weeks' work.
$8 a week.
Yeah.
Can you remember how many hours a day he had to work?
Oh, probably 8 or 9.
8 or 9 hours a day?
Yeah.
Wow.
But he was an actor. He was, you know, like I say, he was in about 16 movies, and he was in a long-running serial Space Patrol. He was a key character.
What
Major Robertson.
Major Robertson was it?
Yeah.
Now, was it something that was silent, or did it have voice?
Oh no, it had voice, and
It-
not only that, it was live presentation, early television. His first job there was $5 a performance.
Did he have a stage name?
Yes,
What-
Ken Mayer.
Ken Mayer.
Ken Mayer.
So he just kept his...
Yeah, he started out as a Robert Taylor, handsome type, and ended up as a Gabby Hayes type.
That's a stretch. Yeah.
Well, he paid more as Gabby Hayes actually.
So he did a bunch of westerns, that type of thing?
Yeah, he was westerns.
And
He took on a western
accent?
accent
Yeah.
and idioms, and made up his own, you know, western kind of wisdom. And
Did you get to go with him when he made movies? And
I could have, but I never did.
Uh-huh. Well, what direction were you heading then while your brother was going off to Hollywood and doing those things?
Well, in 1940, I went to the CCC camps, which was, I took the path of least resistance for a person at that age. And I was 2 years in the CCCs. I finished up as a telephone lineman.
And was that, those 2 years, you did a lot of different jobs then? And
Well, we did fire breaks and road building and built barracks for ourselves.
all in
And
California?
put in, then I got on the telephone crew and put in and took out old lines and put in new lines
And was
all
that
around the county.
was that a paying job, or did you just get room and board?
No, you got $96 a month total. Then your food was taken out of that, $48 a month. And you sent $22 home, and you got $3 cash. And so when you got your $3, there was a lineup as you got your $3. Then there was the barber, then there was the ship service, and then there was, so you ended up with 48 cents to $1, which I would spend for a half a gallon of beer, a loaf of rye bread, jar of mustard, and the rest in Swiss cheese. And once a month I'd have a ball
And
with other people.
but they paid your room and board then out
Room
of
and
your
board was paid, my
out of your-
clothing was taken care of. It was all work clothing, obviously,
and it was all government.
all government. And it was a great place because all the top sergeants came from the CCC camps.
For the military.
See, we were under the Army as far as our bivouac and food and so on. We were under the forestry for our work details.
So what kind of quarters did you have? What kind of quarters, what kind of facilities?
Oh, these were large barracks.
Wooden barracks?
Board and batten, yeah.
Double bunks or single bunk?
Double bunks.
Double bunks. They have a community shower and that type of thing?
Yeah.
How about your latrines? Dig the holes and
Well, they were outside of the barracks.
outside.
Yeah.
And where primarily in California did you do this?
This was in Tahunga.
Which that name doesn't ring a bell with me.
Well, if you take Glendale and Verdugo Road and keep going
Okay.
into the mountains, it's in between Sunland There's Sunland, Tioga, and all the other.
That's a, did you get involved with any firefighting?
Oh yes, 135
135 fires?
fires.
Wow.
Yeah, that was your second deal.
Did they give you any training before you went out and fought?
No, here's a shovel, here's a hoe, here's a Maddox, here's a water pumper,
Off you went, huh?
and off you went.
Did, was it something where people got hurt, or did it,
Oh yeah, there were 200 people killed in one of the fires.
of your CCC group?
I wasn't in that. That
Yeah.
was in Tioga. A group got caught down in a canyon.
200 of them?
200.
Wow, that's something.
Yeah, that was 1937.
Now,
There was none of my people were killed.
Yeah.
Not in my cohorts.
Is there any talk what's going on in Europe through your family? You know, what's with Germany? And
Oh yeah, down the road from where I was the German Bund, and they met in the park down there
And
on the same Verdugo Road near Glendale.
did you listen into any of it or stay away?
No, I went down and drank some beer with a German friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
We went down there. Of course, we kept quiet who I was and what I was.
Did they make an issue of Jewish people in those?
Oh yeah, they had the same Hitler spouting.
And with your family being from Russia and Romania, and you got two brothers up in San Francisco, are you getting any dialogue between your mother and your other brothers? Do you visit each other? Do you do anything that keeps contact?
No, we kept in contact, obviously.
Was the phone something that was used much?
Well, it was used, but not much because it was expensive. It was a dime a call.
Yeah. And that would took, you only had 3 calls and you'd used up your 30 seconds.
Pretty much.
That's no fun if you...
Although it was made for my mother, she was born with a phone in her ear. She was a conversationalist. She kept everything and everybody together.
Did you have a little letter writing? Did you write letters much?
Yeah, I had one uncle. I got a nickel for writing him a letter. That was a big deal.
Where did he live?
He lived in Portland. He was a wealthy man.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the family basically was pretty financially solid, all the brothers and
Well,
the uncle.
no, my mother scrubbed floors and did many things to keep us going.
But she didn't get help then from anyone. She had to do it on her own?
No, my grandfather, I think, helped us.
Uh-huh. And
We lived with him for a while.
with 1940 rolling around, you're almost 20 years old now.
That's when I graduated high school.
And
After the CCC, I went back to high school when I was 18
and how many years did you have to do to get graduated?
to graduate.
2. And
That was Fairfax High School.
I'm assuming that you needed that high school to get into flight training, that they wouldn't have taken you if you...
Well, that's the entry to my best story.
Okay, well, go ahead.
I was graduated high school when I was 20 years old. First job I got was with Lockheed. They sent me to tin bending school, sheet metal, and I was in assembly for a year, and then I moved to the flight line where they had the compass rose. And so I adjusted compass and set instruments for a year. Then the war started. I went there in June of 40. The war started December 41. And I wanted to fly, but you couldn't fly in the Navy because you needed a college degree to become a cadet. But in May of 42, they lowered it to high school, and there was an ad in the paper, and I'm trying to find it in your library here. It says, "Are you between the ages of 18 and 25, a high school graduate? It's all yours when you win your Navy Wings of Gold," and there's a F4U, and of course the Navy Wings of Gold, which I won and paid for by myself, $2.10. But we're not going to quibble about that.
No.
And I never got that airplane, although I did fly it for fun.
Can you remember?
Was
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
excuse me. Then that was it. So I put on my toughest clothes, figuring they wanted warriors, and I went down to the address that it was given. And I got there, and a spit and polished JG prissy fellow said, "We want officers and gentlemen. You're not a gentleman. I mean, here I am. I thought you want tough, rugged people," which one of my nicknames was Rugged from the CCC camp. And so I went crushed, and I went back home, and my brother said, "He can't stop you. He's just a flunky JG." He said, so I changed my shirts, put on my one good shirt, my good pants, and combed my hair, shaved again, and went down there and said, "I'd like to take your tests." And I was always a whiz at IQ tests, at 145 on those. So I took it and passed it. And then I got in, and I had to take the oral examination where they had some high brass interview. They were interviewing me, and I was too much of a gentleman. And so I began to get questions like, "Do you like girls?" And so I thought, oh my God, I've gone too far. So I said, yeah, and I straightened that out quickly enough. And that was that story you didn't want to miss.
They didn't change the test later on, because when I went through it, do you take steps 2 at a time? And do you ever wear lipstick? Really
I don't remember those, but they may have been
Politically
in there.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you remember where you were on December 7th?
Oh, yes. I was sliding off the rump of a Brahma bull named Powderface at the LA Stockyard Rodeo.
And how'd you get into rodeoing?
At that Compass Rose job I had was a cowboy from Shoto, Montana. And we were talking about toughness of a lineman versus so I decided I was going to try rodeoing. So we went on the first rodeo deal. I got an exhibition ride on a buffalo calf. And the guy next to me comes out, and the bull takes him and slams him to the ground. And he lays there doing this. This is my first bull ride, and I'm looking at that. And the name of the bull was Powderface. He was a real Brahma bull, probably about 1,800 pounds. He seemed bigger than that. Anyway, after a series of about a year, where I tried about eight rides, succeeded in none of them, then I drew Powderface in the Stockyard Rodeo, December 7th, 1941. And I slid off his rump and kept running, and I'm still running for the bull.
Now, did you get any money if you didn't finish the ride?
No.
You had to finish the ride?
No, you had to pay, and it was a jackpot.
I see.
$15.
Was that the guy that stayed on the longest, got the jackpot?
No, 8 seconds, best ride.
Best ride. And he said in the stockyards this had to be where in L.A.?
That's, I guess it was somewhere around 50th, 60th, down in the slaughterhouse area at that time.
Can you remember the type of people that were primarily working in the stockyards, that did the slaughtering?
Not really, but I knew the cowboys that were riding the stock. That was my deal. They had more success with women than the average guy. So I became a Southerner from San Francisco, and I adopted Southern accent and all the idioms that go with it, made up my own,
So you weren't afraid of the women then?
No, not at all.
And did you have a one girlfriend, or did you kind of just go wherever the bar went?
I had a girl who lived downstairs from me, who I later married, who was always there. You know, just a marvelous lady.
So it was after the war?
No, this was before the war.
Before the war.
This is where I moved when I went to, in October of 1938, I moved to I'm trying to think of the name of the street, it escapes me for the second.
In L.A.?
In L.A.,
Uh-huh.
in the Fairfax district.
Did you have
Spalding was the name of the street.
Did you have an apartment or a room in a boarding?
No, it was a 4-family flat.
Okay. And you were there with yourself or brother?
Well, the family was together then.
Your father and your two brothers?
Not my father, no.
No.
Although my father, when he'd get ill, he'd come home, my mother would nurse him back to health, send him out for his bimbos.
So is your mother down in L.A. now? Or-
Yes.
She's moved down, or your two?
She moved down in 36
Okay, with the other two boys.
with the other two.
So now you have the mother and the 4 boys back together
Yeah.
again?
Right,
And your dad comes home when he's sick?
yeah.
Okay. And then,
Now, my dad was a heck of a guy, don't get me wrong.
No,
He was not a, you know, it just,
But
and
he's-
my mom she was a one-man woman, so not a,
but is he supporting the family? I mean, is he still, or is your mother still trying to keep the family together?
oh yes.
It was your mother.
By then, though, I was about ready to move out. My older brother had already moved out. He was a handsome devil, and the girls collected him, so he had no problem.
So the family then is your mother's, the kids are going one by one.
Yes.
And your older brother went where?
He went to acting.
He's acting now. And you're trying, at this point, thinking about the military? Because
No, at that time, I'm going to Fairfax High School, and then I'm going to Lockheed to work.
Okay. Now, when you were at Lockheed, can you remember the type of airplanes that they were building at that time?
Oh, sure.
Which ones were they?
P-38. They had the Hudson Bomber, the Vega Ventura, then they had the Model 18, which was later taken over by Lear. And those were the principal aircraft.
And I'm sure.
And I had to go on them and pump up the landing gear so they'd be in flying configuration for the compass adjustments. And so I always said I was off the ground in more P-38s than any man living.
And when you swung the compass, did you have to put the plane back down every time, or did the jacks move?
Oh, we had to jack it up. There were jack points on the wing. Put them on the jack, lifted the wheels up, slid a dolly underneath it, let it down, and this dolly was pivoted.
So you could.
Then you know the compass rose.
You could rotate
And the
it.
beef, which was me on occasion, would push it from station to station. Then we'd read the compass, find out how far it deviated, and then put in little compensating magnets to make it within 2 degrees.
And then you put the compass card in the. Did you fill out the compass card?
Fill out the compass card.
Uh-huh. And of the airplanes that you messed with, I would assume the P-38 was the one that.
Well, there's a 322 model for the English.
What was the difference?
The English put some of their own equipment on it.
Did they put their Rolls Royce in it?
No, they later put the Rolls-Royce engine in
Did you have an Allison in it then?
it. Allison's were.
Mm-hmm. And you never got to run them up or do anything like that, huh?
No, not the P-38. I ran up a Hudson Bomber a little bit, drove it across the runway.
I can remember National Geographic had a picture of that. It was one of my favorite airplanes.
The Hudson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just loved the looks of that airplane.
Yeah, I built the nose and the door. The door had an emergency kit in it, like a bathtub.
Uh-huh.
And
What year was that you were working on the P2D?
1940, 41, and I left there in July of 42.
You did put anything in there that said Irving was here, you know, like Kilroy?
Well, I had some stuff I did, not worth repeating.
Okay.
I turned the camera off.
Shall I put my hand over it and then? So, you were on a bull, and
I was off the ball.
well,
Let's be honest.
and so you were in the stockyards, and everyone around, were they finding out that war had been declared?
It was announced while I was there in the stockyard.
Yeah, on a
Somebody
PA?
apparently had gotten the information, and they put it on the.
Can you remember then, did you find a radio or anything to go listen to what was going on?
Well, the thing broke up then.
Everyone left.
Everybody left.
And so you go home,
I went home.
and was there a radio there where you would listen to
Oh,
what?
yes, oh, yes.
Can you remember what your thoughts were when Roosevelt was speaking?
Oh, yeah, well, of course, we're gonna get them, you know.
And how quickly after that did you go down and try to get in the Navy?
Well, I was exempt from the draft because I was doing war work. But it got to the point of where, you know, if you're not feeling right, you know, everybody else is going off and you're got a safe, cushy job. So anyway, so then when they changed that requirement from college to high school, that's what turned me on.
So you go down and you enlist in the Navy, and what did they tell you about if you finished flight school or you didn't finish flight school?
Oh yeah, they said that your needs of the naval service will rule, and you could, if you don't get that, you could become a navigator or anything else in the Navy.
Could you end up as a seaman?
You could. I don't think that was a problem.
So you get in the Navy, and what rank do they give you, if anything?
Well, the first rank I got was Seaman Second Class,
Mm-hmm.
412-6508. That's my number. I put on the uniform and had my picture taken the last time I wore an enlisted man uniform. And I just got a picture off the internet a month ago. I have that. I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, do that. And where do you go for your first base?
Well, my first base was CPT, Civilian Pilot Training. And I went up to up Highway 395 on the way to Bishop. There's a place called Lone Pine.
Mhm.
And the runway was at Manzanar, across the street from the Japanese Relocation Center.
And
So we dropped hard-boiled eggs on them on Sundays. Not a very polite thing to do, but
and
we also dropped them on ourselves back at the camp.
what did you train in? What type of airplane?
Trained in a Porterfield, which was fore and aft kind of airplane.
Push
About
boat?
90 horsepower.
Uh-huh. Oh, for so you, would the pilot under training be in the front seat? Or?
Well, for some of the training, you were in the back seat, but
Huh.
then, and when you flew solo, you were in the back seat.
Okay.
Keep the balance.
And two wings up,
One wing.
one wing,
One wing, high wing.
high wing. And how many hours roughly would you have had?
38.
38. And these were civilian instructors?
Civilian instructor.
And did they evaluate you then to go on to your next training?
Oh yes, you were evaluated. You were 8 hours a duel before you did anything else. Unfortunately, the first thing he told me, take these sticks, this is how you secure the airplane. And you put the two sticks in the aileron to keep the wind from blowing it. First thing he told us when we got near the airplane, one Sunday he took up a pilot teacher from the Manzanar Center, took off, got to 300 feet, couldn't turn, crashed. What'd he have? he had the restrainers in the wing restraining the aileron. So he and the student died. And that was my next day was my solo.
Okay, so
Anyway, we took that philosophically another day.
can you remember how many guys were there in training?
There were about 30.
30.
There were a couple of oddball. There was a guy 35. We used to marvel this guy could do calisthenics, an old man of that age.
And
I say at 90.
yeah. And you all live in separate barracks? I mean,
Yeah, we lived in a four-man barracks, wood canvas tops.
Uh-huh. And was there much discipline? Did they make you make your bed and check that kind of stuff? Or
Not the kind of CS discipline that you'd get in a regular service.
okay, so you finish your time, you get accepted to go to your next.
Well, I was off for about a month, and then I went to pre-flight school at St. Mary's.
Would they put you back where they'd call you up when there was a space?
Sorry?
How did you get a month off?
Oh, well, it was between the time I got called to pre-flight school and the time I finished civilian pilot training.
Okay, so you waited until there was
I waited until there
were you
was-
back at home then? And
I went back home for a
Okay.
month. Yeah.
and
I took a job with the. This is funny too. I had a friend who was a friend of the president of Bell Telephone, Los Angeles, R.J. Haddon, and I'd been a telephone lineman, so she called him up and she get me a job, an interim job while I'm waiting to be called up to service, and so I got a job picking up the nickels.
out of the phones.
Driving. No, actually, I picked him up at the stations.
Oh, okay.
Then somebody else picked him up at the phone.
Okay.
That was my big job with the telephone company, with my 2 years of lineman experience.
And was it? Did you have to go get a driver, or you already had a driver's license?
I had a driver's
license.
yes.
And the
You were married then?
Excuse me?
You were married at this time?
had you gotten married?
Oh, no.
Okay, you're still a single man.
I'm still a single man. I was single till in between cruises.
Okay.
I finished my first combat cruise, figured I could survive this. I'll take a chance.
Okay, so what's your next station then after your 30 days at home?
Okay, after 30 days, I went to St. Mary's pre-flight school. And this was all calisthenics and studies.
And where was that? Where was St. Mary's?
St. Mary's is across from San Francisco,
Across the bay?
across the bay from San Francisco.
North or east?
East.
Over in Oakland then, in Berkeley, in that
It's
area?
east of Oakland.
East of Oakland. Oh, you were
Walnut Creek.
over in Walnut Creek then?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
on the other side of Mount Diablo.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you're getting engineering and navigation and that kind of stuff?
Yes.
And did you have did
Yeah.
Morse
yeah,
code?
Yeah.
And-
Diddy dum dum diddy. ZOA5, which is the one everybody has to know. That means I can receive 5 words a minute. Slow down.
And which of the classes did you have the most trouble with, if any?
None.
Did they give you the, stellar navigation and sextants and all that, or?
Yes.
And
Yeah, I had taken night school astronomy while I was still at Lockheed. I was planning to be a pilot sometime. So I took advanced mathematics and astronomy.
so did they give you wrestling and boxing
Yeah, they did.
and swimming?
Boxing was a laugh. One of my best friends was Skinhead McClanahan, who was brought up at 5th and B Street down in the San Pedro area. Toughest place in the world, according to Ripley. And he was a fighter, and I was scheduled to fight him. And I had been with him on leave where I didn't know the Irish and the English hated each other, but we were in the St. Francis Hotel. He says, I hear the British Navy's going down one by one. I say, Yank, you can't say that. 2 British officers laying on the deck. So I knew this kid could fight, and he was 19.
So you drew him.
But anyway, the weather was good at Los Alamitos, and so they got all the people out of there, and so they needed people to fly that. So anybody who was in the top 10% of the class at St. Mary's was transferred immediately to flight training at Los Alamitos.
Well, you're staying pretty close to home then, everywhere you go.
Oh yeah, that was great. I had my girlfriend down on the beach when we had beach swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Los Alamitos then would have been actual flying now. You're out of
Actual
pre-flight.
flying,
You're
yeah.
out of pre-flight and you're in
They
the...
were flying the Stearman.
And it was at the Navy Stearman, the N2S?
No, the N2S is a different plane, but it looks like the Stearman.
Uh-huh.
Stearman was by Lloyd Stearman.
So you flew the Stearman then?
I flew the Stearman.
Go ahead and talk to you.
220 horsepower.
Uh-huh.
The
And
N3N was the only one you could do inverted work in. That was the only one. So they had some N3Ns there.
and why would it fly inverted and the others couldn't?
There was inverted falling leaf just to prove you can't scare yourself.
I see.
Which of course you do.
Would the engine stay running?
Pardon?
The engine didn't have oil problems or anything with uninverted?
Well, no, I did it for fun. I got good at it.
And
We did lose a guy who went into a mountain. This way.
had a good view of it when he hit.
Yeah. He had a good view that way. Yeah.
So, how many hours in Stearman's?
I'll just guess at that about 40.
And same thing, 4 men in a cubicle or a different barracks arrangement?
Well, there was another airplane we used called the TIM, an N2T. It was an open cockpit, low wing monoplane. It was a sporty looking plane. That was where I had one of my close shaves. In the TIM, we were doing formation takeoff, 3 planes. And then we'd come down, land, and then we'd change leaders and take off. When I landed the first time, my instructor was in the back, and I stopped. He said, "Turn around." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You want to face up the runway." It made sense to me. And so I'm watching the runway. I could watch the landing. The next day, I had a different instructor. Same scenario. I landed, started turning around. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Going to face up the runway." "You don't have to do that." Here comes an SNC. Guy turned off early off the runway, comes right up, eats my airplane, which is made of plywood, impregnated plywood. Looks like 1,000 matchboxes down on it. He chewed my tail all the way up to the ringwood. Took the parachute harness off the instructor, took the throttle quadrant out of his hand, stopped right here, and I burned my elbow on the manifold. I consider that close.
Yes, yes.
Do a routine shut off, 1100 RPM, full lead, or get out of the plane, take my parachute. All of a sudden there's a hubbub. What happened? Johnny Hart, who was one of the other pilots who'd landed ahead of me, saw the whole thing, fainted. His plane was idling. He taxied down the end of the runway, up on the nose.
Good.
Anyway, I have a little nameplate from that airplane.
You do develop some of those memories. And I'm assuming your instructor realized he'd screwed up.
When I turned around and looked at him, he was just, literally.
Yeah. And the number of people roughly that were there in training, can you remember much about that?
The number of people.
How many people, pilots in training, were there at Alameda?
Oh, wow. I would guess about 60, just thinking of the people lining up to take liberty.
And these people that are flight instructors are Navy what? Lieutenants, JGs, what?
They were lieutenants and JGs.
And-
I don't think there were any full Louis. I think they were more JGs.
More
and,
JGs.
And some ensigns.
So they were guys that were cycled back after they got their wings?
Apparently,
They didn't, were they?
they were normally, they were people who were flying before the war.
Uh-huh,
And they made them instructors, of course.
sure. And so you've obviously done enough to get through to your next, are they calling this basic training where you are now?
Essentially, yes.
And so you finished basic training, did you have to do anything special to graduate from basic?
Nothing, just maintain your ground school and do your stunts.
Did they have a demerit system if the instructor could get?
Oh, yeah.
How did that work for you guys?
Well, terribly for me, because I was always getting in trouble.
I mean, if you got so many demerits, did you have to go see the?
I do ramp duty, carry a rifle, walk up and down for an hour, 2 hours.
And but as long as your flying was okay, they didn't worry too much about it.
As long as your flying was okay.
And so you get through with the N2S, you get through basic, and now you're ready for an airplane.
Now I'm ready for Corpus Christi.
Okay, down to Texas.
So we take a train ride there, stay swacked the whole trip, playing poker. And we get in there, kind of go to the barracks, 11 o'clock, get up at 7. What are we going to do? We're going to take high altitude
The pressure chamber.
decompression chamber.
Yeah.
And here we're hangovered. So they get me, and I'm in there with about 20 other guys. And the guy over there starts giggling. And I started laughing at him, and I should have known immediately that was hypoxia working its way. And so I went out. The next thing I hear, take it easy, take it easy. And I was strong. And I'm throwing guys the length of this thing. And I'm dreaming that somebody is trying to smother me. And what they're trying to do is put that mask on me to bring me back. And I'm throwing guys the length of that. Anyhow, so now I explained it to them, because they give me a down on that. I explained what happened. We've been drinking all the way and everything else, and give me a... So I took the test the next day and passed it, flying colors. So now nobody had passed out. So they said, we're going to have somebody demonstrate hypoxia. So they give me a deck of cards and tell me to deal my favorite hand and so on. You deal it. And they take you up to 10,000, you do it. You go to 14, and then you go to 28,000.
Yeah.
And that was my training.
You got your purple fingers and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The strange thing is, the gal who runs the Spokane decompression chamber for the Air Force is a niece of mine who went in the first Iraq War.
I'll be darned.
Anyway, just a little sideline.
So we get your pressure chamber, and the next thing is, oh, let me ask, what rank are you carrying now?
Oh, yes, you asked that. I'm carrying cadet.
Okay. Which is nothing.
1 star.
Yeah.
I used to call myself the youngest 1-star admiral in the Navy. That worked. But,
Like being a captain in the Marine Corps on a Navy base.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you're now cadet. Irving.
I was a cadet from St. Mary's Pre-Flight
On.
on.
Okay. And you go from La Salle to where?
To Melbourne, Florida.
And what are they?
Now, I had a mid-air collision from Los Alamitos I went to Corpus Christi.
And Corpus Christi was what airplane?
Corpus Christi with 2 airplanes. Was the SNJ, which you did all your heavy work in, and then not the SNC.
SNB,
No, it's a V.
single engine? Single engine?
Single engine. No, I don't think of it.
So the SNJ was the big guy?
The SNJ was the big guy. That was 650 or
Mm.
550 horse.
And
Maybe they were 450.
did you start out solo in the airplane, or did you start out with an
Oh, no,
instructor?
you start out with an instructor because you're going to learn things like crossovers, cross-unders. You're going to learn takeoff and landing.
Gunnery? Did you do gunnery?
We did
They
gunnery,
have a 30 cal and then
30 caliber.
one 30 cal. You
One-
charged it
one
inside.
Pea-shooter, yeah.
Yeah, you charged it.
Yeah,
in.
World War One.
Yeah. And did you do your aerobatics and
Yeah, you finished up with an aerobatic sequence.
any air combat maneuvering, ACM?
Well, I did, but unfortunately I was very green, and I had a mid-air collision where the guy at the other SNJ pulled too tightly, and he flipped over, and I was swinging around here, and I pulled back and mushed into him, and the plane stuck together and crashed. I bailed out at 7,000 feet, and that was the sad part.
And the guy got below you, didn't do
Yeah,
it then?
I hope I knocked him out when I
Yeah.
hit him. Now I'd miss him 10 out of 10 by just dipping a wing.
Well, like you say, the learning curve's kind of low at this
Oh,
point.
yeah, and that was just ignorance.
Yeah. And did they have an accident board that you had to go be in
Oh, yes.
interviewed?
Yeah, I told him exactly what I just told you.
And then did they try to get you back in an airplane real quick, or did they? Make
Just
any initiative?
routine to go back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Now I sweat whenever I lost an airplane in view. I just poured it on.
yeah, if you don't know where it is, it's,
Yeah,
and you know it's nearby.
yeah.
And
I was terrible at crossovers.
cross-unders are better, right?
Cross-unders you could see.
You could see the guy. So SNJs and your
SNV was the other one.
SNVs, okay.
Yeah.
And you're beginning then to be pretty much of a
Now we had
pilot.
instrument training too.
Yeah, but you did that in single engine?
Single engine,
You're under a hood?
under hood.
Yeah, good, glad you're 2.5 minutes. 1 minute. We're gonna, why don't we just take a second here? Oh, God.
You want to stretch?
I got.
You want to get up and stretch?
Is it off?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, honey, and take a drink.
Take a drink, sure.
You don't drink enough. You have to be after all the time it gets to that.
You find this interesting?
Yeah, very much so.
Oh, yes.
You're a good historian,
Yes.
Thank you.
and you're a
I
good
was-
speaker,
I
by
was
the
just-
way. It's worth.
I wanted you to tell about your mother shooting one of your father's girlfriends, but I noticed you omitted that. Maybe that was for the best for the family history.
No, I'm not gonna tell that.
That's what I figured.
That-
She,
that goes
father
up-
comes home one day
Get a little
with,
hair in here.
oh, father comes home one day with a girlfriend sitting in the front seat. Mom comes downstairs and shoots her. Father rushes her to the hospital where she lives. She doesn't even, she gets arrested, she's at the jail for an hour, and then she's home. And that was the end of it. And she told the officers, she was stealing food from my children's mouths.
That's interesting.
I thought that was it. I was shocked. 1930, oh my God.
October 30th.
Can you believe his memory?
No, I can't.
Amazing,
Doing a good job.
I'll say.
Okay, we're
Funny.
back recording again, and you're getting pretty close then to moving on to another base. And
Yes, I am.
do they make any kind of a, when you go from basic training, which it sounds like you're in, to what I would call advanced training, did they make any issue out of it if you had any kind of special
This was called advanced training.
with the SNJ?
That was in SNJ.
So at what point then, Cadet Irving, do you look at becoming an officer? Where does that happen?
September 9th
And at what field?
at Corpus Christi.
At Corpus Christi. So the SNJ is your advanced trainer.
That's my advanced trainer.
Interesting. And so you then become, when you leave Corpus Christi,
I'm an ensign.
you're Ensign Irving
Yes.
Meyer. Okay. So then, as an officer, do you feel a little different?
Yeah, I'm getting more money.
And did they have flight pay then that you got too?
Well, there was a little incident before this happens. All through your training, you are in the Navy, but you're not fish or fowl yet until you select whether you're going in the Marines or in the Navy. Now, the Marines were, at the time I joined, the top 10% were Marines. I want those guys protecting me. I want to be a Marine. But then when we got to the end of the training at Corpus Christi, we were brought to an auditorium. Ensign Gay, who's on one of your pictures, was one of the speakers. He gave the pitch for the Navy. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the Marine. And said, all those who want to be in the Navy, line up over here. All those who want to be Marines, line up over here. What happened to the top 10%? And besides, I got a Navy uniform already. It's going to cost me $160 to get a. So finances ruled, and so I decided I'd go Navy. Now, what sent people to the Navy was, I don't mind flying off of carriers. Maybe I prefer it. What sent people to Marines? I don't want to fly off of carriers. Or I want to fly multi-engine. Or I want to fly commercial sometime, and so they would pick Marines. Then, to jump a whole lot of stories, I was flying from San Francisco down to San Diego and got little engine failure and pulled in Santa Barbara, and I met one of my old friends who took the Marines, and he was being trained in field carrier landing practice. We want Marines protecting our Marines on the beachhead, and so they have to learn how to fly off of carriers. And so that was so much for
Not flying off a carrier.
that decision.
Now,
That was Lebo.
just going back a little bit, your family, you're the only one in the service then, is that of the brother?
At that time,
At that time. Does any of the other brothers end up in?
all of them.
All of them do. But you're the leader now.
Yeah.
And do they pick different services? When they go in, where do they
Well,
go?
my older brother, I think, went in on the draft.
Okay.
My second brother, I think he elected to go in for officer training
And so
in the Air Force, and they found out he was colorblind, and they took him out of the flying program and sent him to college on a college program in Minnesota,
Okay. Was it V-12, something like that?
V-12.
Okay. And so your brothers eventually all get into the service,
And
including.
my youngest brother went in. He went into the entertainment part of the
USO type thing, or?
Yes,
Okay.
although he went overseas and to stations to entertain,
Is he still alive?
and at the Ernie Pyle Theater, and he traveled with the Goldwyn Girls, which was tough duty.
Yeah. Is he still alive? Your younger brother?
My youngest brother is still alive.
And where does he live?
He's in Sioux Falls.
Okay. And as a young ensign in the Navy,
Oh yes.
you've already got your uniform, you get a pay hike, and where do you go?
Well, now I'm going to Melbourne, Florida for operational training. And
Right.
that's,
By train? Do you go by train?
yes, I did. Stopped off one night in New Orleans. As a matter of fact, had a great time. Ate in 2 restaurants.
And you're traveling by train, is it a sit-up travel? I mean, you sit and
Oh, I was used to it.
you didn't get a bunk or anything, it was all, you didn't have a bunk or anything, you had to just sit there and travel for 2 or 3 days to get to the
Oh,
East Coast?
Yeah.
You with other guys that you knew?
Oh, yes.
So they're sending
Yeah.
a lot of, pretty much your class there, that, are they going all the different directions and,
Well, because I had that mid-air, I was delayed a week in getting my wings. I got them September 9th when Italy surrendered.
okay.
They always said they heard I was coming.
And how much did you say you paid for your wings?
$2.10. And immediately I got a match and let it make them look salty.
Okay, so now you're going to operational training, and you're in Florida.
Yes.
And what kind of airplane are you in now?
F4F 3s.
F4Fs.
Yes.
And
It's a great airplane.
can you tell us a little about F4Fs?
Well, F4F's one thing everybody would remember is that you had to crank up the wheels by hand. 29 and a half turns, if you remember. And you had to be careful because if you were pulling G's while you're doing that, it slipped, it'd come around, hit the back of your hand, and your hand would be numb. And that's your stick hand. So you learn how to land left-handed, so, which I did. I trained myself. That's in case I got shot. Anyway, it was just as good I did it all.
Sure.
And I learned how to hook my feet in the rudder pedal so I could pull and push with one foot. These were little safety things.
And there was, the airplane was pretty minimal in that, you know. How'd you charge the guns? Can you remember that?
Oh, pardon?
How'd you charge the guns in the F4F?
Oh, well, you had a kick.
They were
As far-
manual. You had to manually.
Well, you had to manually unsafe them or safe them, but you could charge them with a kick. I think that's same as you did on the F6F.
And how about the oil coolers? Can you remember how you opened those and closed them? Crank them?
The canopy?
And the canopy, crank
Yeah,
the
it's a
canopy?
crank, yeah.
And the
With-
oil coolers?
With grease on it, yeah.
You know, the coolers, can you remember how you open and close those? Were they sort of crank?
No, I don't. I remember the F6F, but I don't remember
Yeah, the F4. Well,
the
you,
F.
and can you remember what the radio gear was in it? What they had for a radio?
Well, you had ship to tower, plane to tower,
Uh-huh.
and you had plane to plane. You had, and then there were only 3 or 4 settings that you had to worry about. Usually they were there when you got in the airplane.
So you're jumping in an airplane now with no guy in the back seat.
That's right.
You're in the front seat all by yourself.
Yeah, but I had almost 100 hours of that with the SNJ and the SNV. The SNV, I should remember, was used for instrument training and was not allowed to use
Maneuvering.
odd maneuvers.
So your syllabus then would basically, how can you remember what you did, what you flew and how you flew it?
In operational training?
Yeah, what was the sequence of events kind of that happened?
Well, there'd be a repeat of a lot of it. Formation takeoff, be crossover, cross under, rendezvous.
When did you get into FMLPs?
Into the F6F?
Carrier practice. Did you do any of that in the F4F? Or going aboard ship, did you have to do any of that?
No, I didn't do anything.
Just all
We did field carrier landing practice at outlying field, flying over jack pines.
And this was in the F4F.
F4.
And so when you finish up with your operational training, Melbourne, you said Florida, where this training was?
Yes, Melbourne.
And that's a pretty nice area, Florida.
Oh, yes, beautiful area.
So I'm sure you're running into town once in a while.
San Jacques.
Yeah. And so the war now is, we're talking what, 42?
This is October 42.
And when did you finish up?
Excuse me, this is October 43.
Yeah. And 43, you're finishing up. You're ready to go to an operational squadron
Carrier landing practice
in the F4F.
in the SNJ.
Okay. You go back, or do they have them there?
Backward. Well, we went to Chicago, Glenview. There was a foul up there. There were the two paddle wheelers
Lake Michigan.
for the Sable and the Wolverine. And so I was up for a fly on the second day I was there, and nobody woke me up. And I missed it. So now I was stuck in Chicago for 2 weeks and I had $24.
Do they pay once a month?
I was down to 3 cents and I won $21 in a crapshoot.
So,
And I ate free lunches on Wednesdays at Glenview Officers Club because the slot machines were paying off.
that's good news.
And here I am, a shiny ensign.
Now,
So
so
then,
you go on the Wolverine?
so now this, no, I went on the Sable actually.
Okay.
So what happened was, a guy by the name of Mayer had gone in the drink, and they had picked him up, and he was in the hospital. And so the mate of the deck who was supposed to wake me up thought I was that one, and so he didn't wake me up. So anyhow, I finally got out there, and now I'm flying the SNJ landing. Got to make 6 landings.
And so when you get your SNJ time in, what happens? Is that the last of it when you get your care calls?
You qualify with 6 landings, and I noticed the guys were getting mad because I was landing long, and they had to push you back
Oh,
because you did a deck takeoff. So I dipped for the deck, you know, just to make it easy on these guys, and I dipped for the deck the rest of my life.
you never got over that.
Never got over that. Come out of there.
Well, you'd get away with that,
Yeah,
and actually sometimes it made a pretty nice landing.
yeah, it made a good drag.
Yeah. So, you know, when you finish your 6 landings, 6 in takeoff, and I'm assuming you either fly back to the beach or you wait until the ship comes back into port. And you know,
Yes.
did you stay out normally more than one day, or did you just go out and call them?
Immediately now I got my advance money and I got my time off.
You get leave now,
First time off since.
and you're on the East Coast,
And I'm in Chicago.
Midwest.
or I'm sorry, you're in Chicago.
Yeah.
So you're getting orders then to where?
Into San Francisco, report to the federal building every day at 5 o'clock.
Hmm.
And see if you have orders. So my mother was living back in San Francisco on 28th Street. And so I stayed with her.
Back to San
And the
Francisco.
day on the 23rd of December, I called in, and they said nothing. So I was relaxed, and then at 5 o'clock, they called in and said, be at Treasure Island.
Treasure.
At 5 o'clock. So I got a Boeing flying boat. And
Pan Am?
17 hours later, I was landing in Hawaii.
17 hours.
17 hours.
Was it Pan Am by chance? In the boat?
Probably.
Yeah. Wow. Well, he probably lived pretty good on that Boeing, on that,
Oh, yeah.
and they probably.
Matter of fact, one of the sailors gave me his bunk. He said, I'm gonna be busy. So he gave me his bunk down in the hold. And I was sleeping at 8 o'clock when we landed, and wakes me up. You got a little thin bulkhead like that holding the ocean out. It scared the heck out of me.
Were there any of your buddies on the plane with you, or you
I
lost?
was solo.
Yeah, you're all by yourself.
So I went to Fort Island, and I met a guy by the name of Wade who was waiting with me, no pun intended. And we were going swimming because it was a beautiful warm night. And there was a rope that divides the high from the high end of the pool from the low end of the pool, and it was off and coiled. And I was lassoing the ladder that you climb out of the pool with, and doing some butterflies and stuff. So when we got to the squadron, and they said, "What's your nickname?" This guy said, "His Cowboy." And that's how my cowboy name came about.
Was there much damage visible when you got to Pearl after a couple of years after the war started? Were there still?
Well, they were there. They were sunk, but they were leaking. There were little boats called juicy flushies, which I'm surprised they're not using now. It went around, just sucked up. I mean, they floated around for 2-3 years, sucking up the oil coming out of those.
Juicy flusies.
Yeah.
And can you remember what clubs you went to, while you were hanging around there at Port Island?
Well, I was only there overnight.
Oh, okay.
And then I went to Maui to join my squadron, which was VF-24 on USS Bella Wood, which is CVL number 24. They were the plank owners. And they had already made one mission down to Macon, I call it, Macon Island and Tarawa, and things of October, November of 43. Now I joined them December 24th of 43.
And when does the ship sail? How long are you there before?
The ship sailed on the 16th of January, so we had some training on Kaului, Maui, which is one of the two airfields, Punane and Kaului.
Did you get the people in the squadron? Oh, go
By
ahead.
the way, this was in an F6F. This
Okay.
is my introduction to the F6F, and I had some total of 16 hours when I was firing in anger
In the F6.
in the F6.
Did you must have had then combat veterans in the squadron who had been at Tarawa, and
Yes.
so did you go out? Did they brief you and give you combat tactics?
Not really. They were kind of aloof from us greenies.
They didn't pay much attention to you.
I
huh?
mean, if one of us became their wingman, of course, then it was a one-on-one thing. But there was no exchange of... and you got to remember that my idea of a ready room was the movie Dawn Patrol. Don't send me up in this great, such a dangerous... And these guys were gung-ho. Get me up. I want to get me a job. There was one guy who cried because he didn't have one, literally.
Can you remember much about the F6, what you liked about it? What kind of an airplane you thought it was?
Well, my description is it's a mass-produced airplane for mass-produced pilots. And it was. It was a very forgiving aircraft. I've seen it come home with the piston out of the cylinder 100 miles and make it back. I have been shot up in ways that most people wouldn't get back. I had an aileron horn fuse where I couldn't turn to the right. So I slow rolled 120 miles back to the base back to the ship. And then I said, okay, now I'm gonna try it. If it works, I land. If it doesn't, I bail. And it worked.
You broke it loose?
It broke loose.
So you're then very quickly you sailed from Maui. Is the ship in Maui, or did you have to go back to Fort
Well, it
Island?
was offshore there,
You
yes.
flew out to the ship.
Yes.
And how many planes and pilots were there in the squadron?
Okay, there were 36 pilots. It used to be they had Douglas SPD dive bombers, 10 of them on the ship. They were removed. I didn't know it at the time, but I had been dive bomb trained. And we replaced in F6F the SPDs, which were being phased out of. So there were 10 of those that were taken off, and
Was that one squadron or two then?
one squadron,
One squadron. And it was VF what?
24.
24.
Air Group 24 would include all of them. There were like 10 torpedo planes, and there were 24, good number, F6Fs.
So were they TBM?
So there were more pilots. There were 36 fighter pilots,
Were the torpedo bombers TBMs?
TBA,
Okay. By then they probably were the TBF.
TBF.
TBFs, yeah.
Yeah.
So, with the ship underway, how long does it take you to get to your first combat area?
29th of January, Kwajalein.
Kwajalein.
But
And-
while we're going out there, we're training with our leaders, and we're shooting at spars, bombing spars off being towed by the ship.
Destroyer.
We're getting carrier landing training.
Can you remember your CO's name, XO, in the squadron?
My CO, Everett M. Link,
And do you remember the XO at all?
he was a trade school boy. Unfortunately, he was not the epitome of an officer.
I see.
Now, the epitome of an officer was the captain of the ship, Captain Admiral Pride. He's the guy who invented the fiddle bridges that made the carrier landing.
Oh, under the wires?
Held the wires up.
Okay.
He later took command of the 7th Fleet. He was the coolest head you'd ever seen. He ran the tightest ship you ever saw. People trained it and nuts.
And
Everybody knew their job. Everybody was. He would say, "Respot the deck." That's it, and quiet efficiency would go on. Everything would happen that's supposed to happen. He would hold the captain's meeting at 6 o'clock in the evening, and in 5 minutes he knew the status of everything on the ship.
good man.
Great man.
So, where do you see your first combat?
Well, where did I not see it first? First flight, Kwajalein. We're 120 miles from it. We're launched pre-dawn into a storm. Prior to that, 250 airplanes. Prior to that, I crawl up to my airplane, get in, ask the plane captain how's the airplane? You know, is there any flaws in it, anything I should be aware of? How are the trims set for takeoff? We're going to be catapult launched. I don't know, sir. This is my first day as plane captain. I just got off mess cooking yesterday. Okay. Stand by to start engines. Else had fired and hit the waterway. You know, just splash, nothing. And so when they're showing these gun films, they put my name on that one. Start engine, brr, flames. He'd primed it, I'd primed it, it was over primed, gasoline's running out. I'm illuminating the whole fleet. Now to me the Pacific Ocean is this big. I'm here illuminating the fleet, and the Japanese submarines are everywhere. Finally, some CPO comes over with little kitty lugs and goes, knocks it off. So now I got to judge it. Launch airplane. Launch.
Too much nose up?
It's torpedo plane. The radioman in the back is adjusting things and not paying any attention to the wind-up. Wasn't in his seat, wasn't tied down. They launched him. He went sailing back to the tail, face first, lacerated. Unbalanced the plane, stair-stepped, came down, went down, blue ripples on the water, and made it up.
Good grief.
Launch. 2 lights. Phew. Crash. What happened? An SBD from another plane, from another carrier, had launched on a crossing pattern with ours. Instead of going 160 knots, he's doing 110. Raymond Clapper, who was a war correspondent, was riding in the SBD. They were both killed. So was the pilot. Pounding was his name in the F6F. Now it comes to me. Takeoffs, suddenly there's a light, and I'm going too fast. Whew. It's another SBD coming off there. And I see my guys up here, and I go to join them, and I get about here, and here comes a plane slicing. And I dip, and I'm looking at my red light in a water reflection, and this guy crashes. So now we lost about 6 people, and the war hadn't started for me yet.
It's your first launch.
So now I'm divorced from my guys. They get up 11,000 feet of clouds, take off, do the mission in Kwajalein. I call in, tell them my situation. I tell them I'm in the hole in the cloud, dawn is now breaking. And there goes an airplane. It's got to be a Japanese. Out of gas. I've been running on my takeoff settings for 20 minutes. I'd emptied my belly tank, which I corrected, and caught that. And I used up a lot of gas, 150 gallons. So this guy makes it in the cloud. Then I get a vector. There's somebody lost and doing a square search vector this way. So I go out there and there's a big V in the clouds and I can't see them, and they say you merge with them. Well, these guys read my vector and took the reverse and went home and made it. Another guy, Valdemar Christensen, he was just about ready to bail out. He decided he wasn't going to make a water landing when he heard the vector, and he took it, and he came back. And when he was getting out of the plane, his quick attachable clips were not hooked onto his parachute. Had he bailed out, he'd have bailed out. Anyway, so those guys made it, the other guys didn't. And that was my first combat landing.
Oh, man.
So,
Next day, took
Unbelievable.
off, we hit Roy and Namur, and my war started.
what was Roy?
Roy, R-O-I, and Namur, small atolls right near Kwajalein.
And when you say hit it, were you dropping air-to-ground ordnance?
Dropped bombs, dropped belly tank, flaming belly tank, napalm,
Okay.
and gunnery.
How many napes did you carry?
How many what?
Napalms did you carry?
Just your belly tank.
Just a center line.
Yeah, you just put your junk into it. Well, you just transferred the napalm, and it converted the gasoline into jellied gasoline. And then there was a trigger on it.
Now,
So when you dropped it,
do you get any battle damage back? Do you know whether on your
not
first?
on that one.
You don't know anything, huh?
Oh yeah, I got battle damage many times.
No, I mean, no, you don't get You don't know whether you hit anything that it's shipped.
Oh,
You know, does intelligence come
yeah,
back? And,
there was one, this is a laugh. There was a place where I went in and fired on a bank that was there, and it was just in from a waterway. And then somebody else had fired and hit the waterway. You know, just splash, no, nothing. And so when they're showing these gun films, they put my name on that one. I said, speak up, whoever you are.
have you stayed an ensign, or are you getting promoted?
Well, I stayed in ensign, I think, for 15 months.
Okay.
So I was promoted when I got back.
Okay, when you got back. So, the ship then, what happens after it? How many more?
Well, there's rod, moored, truck, Ponape, Palau, and then we start hitting New Guinea, which Cyclops, Wakti, Samar, Emerald, lots of islands.
Where do you, on your first cruise, do you get air-to-air combat at all?
Yes.
And when do you get your first kill?
Well, February 22nd was, first one was a Lily, which is a small transport airplane. And I hit these guys coming in an overhead run. And I had to use negative G's to get him. I had overestimated his speed. And I saw my incendiary sparkle on his wings, and he went in. Second one, I forget the date, was a Betty 10-passenger bomber, kind that Yamamoto was shot down in.
And you remember what mission that was, where it was?
It was just a vector to a bogey, and the four of us came out there, and I was number 4, and I come down and did a high side on him and then slipped through. And I was the last one to shoot at him, and so I claimed the last licks on him anyway.
So he went in after you hit him?
And he went in after. And then the next one was on June 9th, which I claim is the first kill of the Mariani turkey shoot, but it really didn't happen until the 20th. So I was a little too premature, but that was 0. And there were 4 of us chasing him. And you would think we would use all the wonderful tactics they gave us. No, I want to get him. And so fastest airplane, fast. Anyway, he makes a big turn and he's coming right at me. I get ready to just put my nose above him and drop my... He does a split S. We're at 50 feet, I should say.
In the water?
He got square and went right in the water. Took himself out of it. I flew over him, and Ramsey Harden came by, just missed me. So I'll claim him. I claim what I say. I said I took my oxygen mask off and scared him to death.
Now,
What do you say?
so it sounds like a lot of the missions then were air to ground that you were primarily.
Well, a lot of my missions, mostly my second missions, were air to ground.
When you say second missions, what do you mean?
Well, my second cruise.
Your second cruise.
This is the first cruise on the Bella Wood.
But your first cruise then, your combat.
We did get some aerial. Those were 3 we saw. Those were 3 we downed. I never saw any more while I was in the air.
But were you caps a lot most of the time, or were you flying cover for the TBMs, or?
Oh, we'd fly cover. That was the Betty was a tear cap. Was a Fleet Combat Air Patrol.
Well, when you went into truck was a pretty heavily defended area for the Japanese.
When I went into where?
Truck? You mentioned truck, didn't you?
Yes.
That was
Yeah, truck is where I got shot.
Yeah, you mentioned you had 2 Purple Hearts. Did you get those on the first cruise, second cruise, or?
First cruise.
Both of them.
Both of them.
And
I didn't get a second one. I earned one, but I didn't need it. It was just a superficial plexiglass. Took a piece of skin out of my eye up there.
God, that would have been a Medal of Honor for some of our congressmen.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
No, but the other one,
Love it.
I like to tell this story. We're coming in at 7,000 feet, and it really could walk on the flak,
What the base?
which is now a truck.
Truck, okay, that's what I thought.
And is an early flight. And U-Man is a mountain. There are 4 mountains: spring, fall, summer. U-Man is spring. Anyhow, it had a 3-inch gun on top, and my leader was taking me into it. And so we fired at that. Then he apparently saw something which I couldn't see yet for the mountain, and he wing overs, and I go straight in for that, and then I see there's a ship down there, and my leader is going there. I pulled up, an SB-2C dropped a 500-pound bomb on that 3-inch gun, helped my turn. I went down there, just get ready to straighten out, boom, behind me. Now I know it must be the 3-inch gun, that's taking a big chunk out of my airplane. So I call up, say, M6, you can give me a checkout. So he joins up, he goes around me. You okay? I said, well, it's still flying. Let's go. I said, now I can feel the blood in my shoe, warm, sticky, and I look down and there's a bunch of shrapnel down there. Most of it falls off. There was this threaded component. I figure that's the height adjustment for the shell in there. And we finish the mission, hit a small island, and come back, land. And a seaman brings me a bullet. What had happened, one 12.7, like a 50 caliber size, had come in, had hit the electrical system, hit the hydraulic system. It was peeing in my boot, and that's what I thought was the warm blood. It hit the armor plate. That was a big sound, just reverberating in there. And then, of course, it hit me, and I got a few pieces of bullet shrapnel in my shin, and that's that Purple Heart. But it was all the things I imagined that didn't happen was a funny part of that.
Well, they lost a lot of airplanes at Truck.
Oh, I had bullet holes in others. I told you the aileron horn story. But then it got to be where you got bullet holes.
Were you losing many pilots out of the squadron?
Did we lose many pilots?
Yes.
Quite a few.
36 pilots you said you started out with?
Out of 36, I would say we probably lost half.
And were they all lost, or did any of them show up again as POW?
Very few lost to the enemy. I'm mixing 2 cruises here, but yeah, very few. I would say 5 versus 15.
Were you happy with the F6 Hellcat?
Was I happy with
With the Hellcat as an airplane to get you there and
That's
get
my airplane, that's my mission, go.
Okay. And so at some point they pull you offline, and the ship has to go back and get refurbished, and you've been refueling at sea and getting supplies.
Well, this ship had a super engineer on it. He kept it floating when all the others of the class went back for repairs and maintenance and so on. He was the kind of guy who was in the Merchant Marine before the war, before our war anyway, and he had a propeller fall off of his merchant ship. So he had him move the cargo forward, lifted it out of the water, had him bring him a new propeller, put the propeller on, and continued on his mission. And that was the kind of guy he was. He maintained the boilers when everybody else's boilers were popping.
He had the experience.
So the Bellwood stayed out a whole year compared to
Mm.
6 months. It finally was kamikaze in October of 1944, and they killed 135.
Mm.
I was not on it.
When you get pulled offline, where do they send you back to?
Well, we went to Majuro for restaging for the bigger part of the second half of my Bellwood cruise. Yeah, whenever you see a shot of ships forever, that's Majuro.
Mm.
And you someplace where they had to go back, replace your pilots, and you probably need some other
No,
airplanes.
the pilots were flown in.
They were flown in.
They would come in torpedo planes and pick them up off some island or off some other ship, or some of them would fly in from replacement airplanes.
Was an airplane.
Yeah.
And but do you get any break at all between your first cruise and your second cruise?
Yes, I came back home July of '44, and then we reformed the squadron, went up Seattle and San Diego, and we went back out in January.
On the Bellwood?
No, on the Santee,
On the Santee.
CVE 29.
Okay, so you're on the Santee, but somewhere along the line you mentioned between cruises you got married.
Yes.
And so how'd that come about?
Well, let's see now. We came back from Pearl Harbor on the Bellwood. That was when it finally came back to the States. And shot crap half the time. Had special rations half the time. And so I had a beautiful suntan when I started, but I was emaciated and liquor sodden when we got home. And we were down in San Diego when I had promised the chief I'd make a chief's liberty with him. Little did I know. This guy was 240 pounds. He looked like a torpedo. And anyhow, we got really swacked, and so all my beautiful, healthy looking suntan and everything else went out the dissipation. So I got home and I made a date with my girlfriend who I'd been corresponding with. She was my downstairs neighbor. And my family had set it up for me, set me up literally. Anyhow, I realized that I could survive the war. I proposed to her, and we eloped. I called up my mother-in-law and said, "Hi, Mom." She said, "I'm not your mother." I said, "You are now."
Let me ask. Can you remember how many missions you had on your first cruise?
149.
149. And then when you were getting married, was it still Jewish tradition that you had to marry a Jewish girl, or could you pick anyone?
Well, that would be tradition, but I was married by a justice of the peace from Arcadia.
So she was, or was
He was a friend of mine.
Was she Jewish?
But a week later, no.
Yeah.
Oh, my wife was Jewish, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
A week later, I got married legally in a synagogue with a rabbi.
So that made your mom happy, I'm sure.
Well, it made everybody happy. It didn't mean that much to me. I'm not that religious a guy.
So you get how many days leave before you go back? How much leave did you get before you hit?
Well, I had leave till October, so July, August. In October, I got orders to go to Alameda. Got to Alameda, got orders to go to Seattle.
And then when you get to Seattle,
Went to Sandpoint,
okay,
and there we trained with the new squadron. There were about 8 of us of the original squadron.
so you guys are the salts in the
We
squadron.
were the salt.
And all these other guys have no combat experience, or do you get a few
No,
they're all
all of them are green.
all green. So what do you have to do to get them snapped in?
Just hope they don't fly too close to me.
That's right.
You don't have to, you just say if you survive, you survive, and that's it, huh?
Yeah,
You're still flying Hellcats.
pretty
that's
much.
More.
FM2s. We went backwards.
FM2s, how did that?
FM2 is a Martin version of the F4F.
That's what I was thinking. It only had 4 50s, didn't it?
Yeah, yep. My first flight, I come back in and my prop is frozen in high pitch. So I got one shot at the runway. And I've got a guy who's the character, Peter Otto Becker. He had sensitive ears. He used to turn his phone off as he came in for landing. And here am I giving a mayday call. I'm making an emergency landing. So he's on the runway rolling, and I come down and I bounce my wing over him. I had seen a guy do that at Lockheed when I was out on that. And I thought it was a good idea to do it then. And now I'm coming toward the end of Sand Point is a peninsula, coming across the peninsula. This was a ground loop an airplane. So I said, time to ground loop. So I ground looped and I didn't fall. I came around okay. Here's a record that plays in my head with Peter Otto Becker down in San Diego. Plane in the groove, take a wave off. Plane in the groove, your wheels are not down. Plane in the groove, take a wave off. Plane in the groove. The field is closed. The field is closed. That's exactly how it went.
They didn't have a guy out there with a very pistol or anything to...
Well, that's another story. I'll jump ahead to Fort Island. I was then the assistant operations officer at Barbers Point, and I was visiting my counterpart in the tower of Fort Island when here comes an OS-2U, which is a float plane, and he's starting to land on the runway. And the guy with the blinker light is out there, fortunately, and he's giving him red lights. And we hear plane in the groove, you're a seaplane, you're a seaplane. You flies up again, comes around, come back again. Plane in the groove, you're a seaplane, you're a seaplane. He finally gets the word and comes out and lands in the water. The guy says, I gotta see this joker. Says, I wanna see too. So we run down, get in the Jeep, go down, the guy's there, and he's just reaching in the back, pulling out a parachute bag, stuff. I say, what in the hell were you trying to do? He says, oh, I knew what I was doing. He steps right off the wing into the water. Funny story.
So
back to...
it's kind of interesting. I think someone just bought Treasure Island. It's no longer a military island anymore.
I call it Treasure-ishima.
So you're then putting another squadron together, getting trained, and you said you got promoted when? To
Yes, I'm JG now.
You're JG now. And where in the squadron? Does that make you ops? Does it make you XO with all this?
Well, I'm about middle.
So you're...
They picked up some guys who were instructors, and they became... See, I have a little expression, rates are made in the States. The guys got their... And so they became the leaders of me and us experienced guys. And it was dumb.
I don't know.
The skipper got killed doing what I told him not to do. He grounded me because I told him, he says, you're not aggressive enough. I said, what I want you to do is I got Peter Otto Becker, he's the cameraman. We'll go down, we'll pick out the targets. You come back and at your leisure, you'll find what you want to hit. You going down there and nosing around. I said, there's a Japanese guy there with his toe tied to the lanyard of a machine gun. And he's got that part of the sky, and he's got his Saki and his girlfriend there. And when somebody flies over that part of the sky, he just opens up. I said, they're bound to get you. There's somebody covering every bit of the sky. He said, you're not aggressive enough. Grounded me, went out, went nosing around, hit the belly tank, caught fire, stepped on the wing, pulled his chute too soon, burned the shrouds. Here goes an academy man. Had to be a hero.
Now they're taught if you
7 out of 9 were killed that way.
of the
Had to be a hero.
yeah. Sad. So you're married. You're a JG. You're with a new squadron, or reformed squadron. You're aboard ship and you set sail. Where do you go?
To Hawaii, to Majuro, to Kalului, Maui.
You train there at Maui?
We train there, do some carrier landing work, and then we take off.
And where do you go?
10 minutes. 10
Where do you go next?
Well, on the way from America to Hawaii, they get mad at you if you say that. It's the mainland. There was an admiral whose plane was lost, and so we flew searches, triangular searches from the ship 200 miles out looking for him, all the way from San Diego to Pearl Harbor. Didn't find him.
Were you using your plotting board that was
Oh,
underneath?
yes.
And they give you your
Markade.
yeah. And
Yeah, they're very good things. I use those to do my vector work in school. Perfect.
So when do you first start getting into combat then?
Trying to think. When we went for the Philippines to escort up to Okinawa, Okinawa was, the first landing was April Fool's Day, Easter Sunday, and D-Day, April 1st, 1945.
Hmm.
And so we fooled around and collected the fleet that was going to hit Okinawa, and then went on out to Okinawa with them.
So you didn't get to Iwo Jima.
Oh, I didn't do the Iwo Jima thing, but I did a year before. The day that we shot down the Lily, February 22nd, Washington's birthday, we had attacked Iwo Jima.
Nice.
And at that time, I was on the outside of a left-hand turn, so I was the closest man to Japan.
Did you get over to Chichijima where Bush was shot down
Yeah, I was up that same day.
when Bush?
Yeah, yeah.
So the San Jacinto must have been in your,
Chichijima, Jima, Chichijima.
it must have been in your task force, probably.
Well, I'm glad we didn't get shot down there. Did you read the book Fly Boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't treat them nicely.
They ended up on the dinner table. I said they ended up on the dinner table.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, you cut their livers out and make the officers eat them.
Yeah.
So you're at Okinawa. That was, the kamikazes were huge at Okinawa. How did that go?
We got the job. Now, the Santee was not a first-class carrier. The Bella Wood was a fleet-type carrier, 36 knots. It was a fast carrier task force. So the Santee got the yeoman work, just as, not as glamorous, just as dangerous, maybe more so. So we had 2 islands that we had to keep the kamikazes down on, Ishigaki and Miyako. So we would fly missions, attack the island, then fly combat air patrol around till another group would come. And we would try and bomb the runways, keep the Japanese from coming in at night, and then arming and taking off for the fleet. One particular time, we had been shot at royally. We're up flying combat air patrol over the target, TCAP. And I look down and I see 3 twin-engine bombers and 10 single inline engine airplanes. And they're flying over the island like they owned it. Well, they gotta be Bettys and they gotta be Tonys from where I was. And it was a gray day, overcast. So I passed the word on to one of these teachers from the school who is now a leader and tell them that we've got those people there. His wingman was now Peter Otto Becker. Peter Otto Becker comes out after a little while and says, "If they're enemy, let's go get them." Well, his mic hadn't warmed up yet. I get, "They're enemy, let's go get them." Right then, two of the, quote, Tonys do a chandelle, and we're at 5, they're at 7,000 feet, and Blackman and I are the two guys protecting Pretzel and Peter Otto Becker. One of these guys dives down like he's sucking us in, because we know there's 8 more of them down there. So I hold back and wait, and sure enough, this guy starts for Blackman. I come down there and I nose to nose him, looked like Top Gun, just past him 30 feet. And I fired him, and I'm watching my incendiary sparkle on his wings. I pull through, I said, "My God, he's gonna get Blackman." I black out, I come to, and I'm on the guy's tail. And I'm just ready, I said, "This is Koki 5-4 over Miyako. Angel 10, we got 10 Tonys and 3 Bettys. Anybody wants to join in is welcome." And I'm about to put the coup de grace on us. They're P-51s. Suddenly this guy grows an oil cooler, gets the right angle on his wing, and I go, "Oh God." I pull alongside of him, slide on him. "Okay," he said, "Okay." Well, he wasn't okay. He went in to drink, but they saved the pilot. So I got myself a P-51.
We're going to take a break. We left off with you around Okinawa, shooting down a P-51 by mistake, and let's go on from there.
Trying to think of what happened there. Those were routine days. Get up, go to work, shoot up the island, patrol it, and go home. We did have some incidents, like we lost the pilot behind me, just disappeared on a run. Nobody saw him, nobody found him, nobody had anything. We hung around, looking, and we were getting low on gas. And when I say low, when I got back, I pushed the throttle to go forward after landing and ran out of gas. And that was cutting it a little short.
I have one question. When you were doing air to ground,
Yes.
and I suspect along with the Marines, did you have an air officer on the ground with
Yes.
them calling in?
Yes,
Were you?
there would be one, yes.
Did that always work out satisfactory?
It did for me, and I think they were content with it.
Mhm.
The incident where I talk about how I thought I killed Ernie Pyle is an example of that. We got a call for a mission from one of the ground controllers, and I looked at the situation and told him that the only way we can come in, we're gonna drop links and casings on his head. He said, "That'll be better than what we're getting now."
Mhm.
And so went ahead and did a low run on it.
Was there any pile in over there then?
Pardon?
Was there any pile there?
Not in that particular one, but it was a similar one where I did a run like that. And then when I got back, I heard Ernie Pyle was killed.
Oh,
And I thought I'd killed him.
yeah.
And it wasn't until the afternoon it came in that he was killed by a sniper.
Right. Yeah.
And I was relieved, but he was still gone, you know.
Sure.
It was sad. But anyway, that's the way we...
One of the things I wanted to ask was about the number of kamikazes at Okinawa and the fact that they couldn't get them all. There were so many of them that
Thousands.
they got through. And with your air patrols, you were not able to intercept them?
We were angry because all we got to do were those island
Air to ground?
run, air to ground. Rarely did we get anything with an airplane in it. I'm not even sure the squadron got any airplanes in our Okinawa run. And yet they were a target-rich environment.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me that
Yeah.
with all those kamikazes coming in, with, pilots that didn't know they had maybe 5 or 10 hours in airplane.
Yeah.
And yet they still were able to do the damage they did.
Now I came back, I had an ailment. My lung collapsed. And I think it came from a close air support, which is what we're talking about. We're supposed to drop a bomb. It's supposed to last 13 seconds and then go off, time delayed. Get you out of there. So we give it a minute. So my leader went in and dropped his bomb. I waited a minute and a half, went in, got over it, his bomb went off. Mine was in the air, both of them exploded according to my wingman. My canopy blew off, and this was 2 weeks before my incident. So now the incident occurred, I'm standing on deck May 24th, 7 o'clock, and the Comfort, which is a hospital ship, got kamikaze. And I was talking to a group that was gathered there just watching the action from the stern. And he said, I sure wish I'd go home. I said, I don't want to go home. I said, I'm trained. I said, I can survive when somebody else might not. I can hit a target when somebody else might not. I said, the war's got a couple more years. I want to stay here. Now this is May 24th, 1945. The ship made a turn and some stack smoke wafted across. And I got it and I breathed it in and I coughed. I went cough, cough. A long wheeze. And then I felt it hard to breathe. There's something wrong with me. I think I got carbonated. I want to get some oxygen. Because we used to take automobile engines and get the carbon out with oxygen. So I went down to the ready room and put on my oxygen mask and hooked up to a tank. And felt okay. Then I decided I better go down to a ship. So I went down the hangar deck and hooked up to an airplane. And I felt pretty good, so I jumped off the wing and I felt like my lungs were filled with water, just, I crawled back, I said, something wrong with me, get me a medic. And they got me a medic and they diagnosed said, you're going back to the States.
Really?
Here I told this guy, I'm gonna stay here for 2 years and fight the war. They're lowering me down. He said, you lying son of a...
So they did send you back.
So they sent me back. So now they first transferred me from the Santee to a hospital ship, not to a hospital ship, but to the president named boats, cargo and transports. They would take the soldiers ashore and then pick up the remains when they came back and transfer them to a hospital ship. So they put me on there and they had a couple of kamikaze alerts. And now I'm a pilot, I'm the most useless thing in the world. Sitting there waiting to see whether those kamikazes are coming in to Karamaretto, which is the name of this incident. Anyway, so we never got to shoot an airplane. And we would have loved to,
Gotten one that
chalk them up.
Sure.
Especially to get them because they were doing such mayhem.
Sure.
Yeah,
When you were doing the bombing for the Marines, how far off the deck were you when you were bombing?
50 feet.
50 feet with the bombing?
Yeah.
Thrown
Oh,
in?
with the bombing, no. We would standard bombing that we were trained in is simple. It's a 60-degree angle, and you start at 4,000 feet, and you trigger at 2,500 feet. And the way I used to do it is I'd fire my machine gun, and when I see the incendiary sparkle, then I'd trip the bomb, which gave me a reference.
Sure.
rather than sea level and count the numbers and do all the rest of this, it was just a little trigger.
Sure.
And I got pretty good with that.
It's interesting, I've not heard that before.
Good
Right.
idea.
I hadn't heard that before.
No, that was my invention.
Well, how many missions did you have then before you were pulled back with your class?
149.
Total? Was that just
Total.
on your second cruise?
That's my first and second. They
Oh,
were-
that was total, 149
Yeah, there was about 80 on the first and 60.
on the second. And when you were there at Okinawa, somewhere in that vicinity of time, and I don't remember exactly where, there was some pretty bad weather.
But it was bad on the ground. They were really getting wiped out. The Japanese did not surrender, which meant that every Japanese was 1.5 men, because they were still shooting Americans when they were wounded critically.
Well, when I mentioned weather, you know, they had some pretty heavy weather from the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
And did any of that involve your ship?
You mean the kamikaze?
No, just bad weather, you know, clouds, rain.
Oh, yes. The Bella Wood, I came aboard looking at the screws dripping water.
Yes.
The ship was so tilted.
Did you have a lot of faith in the LSOs? Did you trust?
Absolute faith.
You have good ones and bad ones, or all good ones?
They're all good ones. They're it. They're flying your airplane. You're not doing a thing but responding. And John Harper, had 8,000 landings, including 80 for me. And I'll give you one of them that's a classic. I took off for a mission, rendezvoused at 1,000 feet, and smoke came out of my engine. I called down, said I'm on fire. Now I'm coming back to the ship. Came back. As I made my first pass, the pilots had already moved the planes forward. And that was like 5 minutes. They got them out of bed and got them on the ship and moved them out. I came in to land, and this was an oil leak, not fire. And the oil had smothered my face, smothered my windshield, smothered my eyes. I cleaned them out, and I came in. As long as I was sideways, I could see the ship. Then I got out here and I lined up, and I lost it. I took a wave off to the right. I intentionally did a slide down to the water to pick up speed so I could control the airplane, and made it. Came back, went around again. Came back, got here, lost sight of the ship. Same maneuver back down again. Third time around, I came down and I saw him give me the flap sign. It means your flaps are not down. But I saw him, and now I'll run you back to my CPT days. I used to take off fanning the rudders. You know, I just had no sensitivity, whatever. And so the instructor told me, I want to set you 3 feet from the edge of the runway, and you're going to stay there and take off, and when you land, you're going to land 3 feet. So I learned to land this way, looking back. And now I saw him give me the flap sign. I knew where the center of the deck was. I just took the cut anyway. He said he gave it to me. I never saw it. Went down and I landed like this. I hit so hard that I belched the latch off of the canopy safety. Canopy came by, hit my head, went there, and all the oil was on it, and I was in the dark. Now I'm catching a wire, which I don't know where I am. Go to the end, and I get it up as fast as I can, and I'm on the deck, and I'm safe. So I started climbing out, and I climb and I'm holding on to some cord lines, and I had pulled my parachute when I flew. I get down, there was a sailor down there, "Can I help you, sir?" I said, "No, thanks." I said, "I'll probably slip and break both our asses." True story. And so he got down there and he took that billowy white parachute and started wiping my face with it. But I knew I was going to give up my left eye. I saved my right until I just absolutely had to take that final cut. But this was habit, you know.
You never know what trick is going to help you in the end.
You never know. And
Never know.
that one there. Oh, speaking of that, that'll lead me into, I was at a party. This is now after the war. I'm assistant operations officer at Barbers Point. My leader is Denny Denmark. And we're at an officers club dinner, soiree, whatever it was. And I overhear him say I'm pretty rusty on instruments. That's all. 2 weeks later, we're flying a JRB and I'm in the co-pilot seat. And we're coming around a big high cliff and we're heading right into weather. And we're 300 feet, making 500 feet a minute down. Well, it doesn't take much arithmetic to know we're not going to do that for a long time. So I sort of grab the stick. I figure he's occupied, and no, you're supposed to let people know you're taking over. And I just eased it back and leveled it off, then went about my business, and here we go again, 300 feet, 500 feet a minute down. So I just took it over, threw it in the left-hand turn, and went over, and the palm trees are just coming by. Now I gotta get out of here. I say, what's the course? So I grabbed the map out of the map and I pulled up, and it's a wonderful map. It's saved paper because the islands which go this way, and that's north, the islands are this way, and that's the map. So I'm trying to find out where north is, trying to find out which way to get out of here. Finally, I just pick one, 120, and get it. We missed the hills and missed the mountain. I flew the airplane all the way back, never spoke a word. I landed it, etc., etc. A couple weeks later, another soiree, I hear the guy say, "I really got to take your instruments. I never got to take instruments." Wow. Now, if he never made that little statement like you mentioned, you wouldn't be hearing the story.
Yeah, you never know. So you're then taken back where with your collapsed lung? Where do you go? With the collapsed lung, where do you go?
Oh, the collapsed lung, I came by. I was supposed to get off at the hospital in Hawaii. But the doctor aboard ship said, "No, you're going home, sailor." So he kept me on the ship, and I went to Oakland to the hospital there, Naval Hospital. Then I went back home, and I was on medical leave, but they counted it regular leave.
You didn't have to pay for it, did you?
Naval service. Anyway, so now, very interesting you asked that question. Now the date is August 6th. I'm down at the Naval Hospital being interviewed to see whether I go back to flying status or not. I go in there and I'm not sure they're telling me the truth about my injury. So I want to opt for flying status because I know if they'll let me fly that I'm really okay. They asked me if I wanted to get out on a medical discharge. I said, no, it's a 2-year war, etc., etc. And I can do better than the next guy, etc. And they took that, so they said, okay, you're cleared for flying status. I walked out of the room. A guy comes running up to me, he said, the war's going to be over. I said, what do you mean? I just left it 2 weeks ago. It's a very hot war. He says, they just dropped an atom bomb on Hiroshima. What's an atom bomb? Well, it's a big bomb. It's Section 8 down the hall. Well, I should have gone. So anyway, it turns out it was an atom bomb and the war was going to be over. And now I'm back to flying duty. You needed 44 points to stay stateside. I had 43 3/4. So they sent me back overseas. And that's when I became assistant operations officer at Barbers Point.
Now, did they ever figure out why your lung collapsed? What caused that? Didn't know.
They figured it was a blister or something. I suspect it was with that canopy sucking off.
Yeah.
But, no,
Well, so you're an operations officer at Barbers Point. You're back in Hawaii, and you got your wife with you?
yes, I do. She came in January.
Children?
One child.
When did that happen?
That happened August 29th, 1944.
Before you went back over, huh?
Before I went, I was there for the birth, and I was there to take care of him for a while.
And a boy, girl?
Boy,
Boy. Still alive?
no, he died an early AIDS victim. He was an early AIDS victim.
Oh.
Well, let me go on then. You, at Barbers Point, are you just hanging around to get out, or are you trying to make a career?
No, actually, I'm trying to make a career. I signed up, I wanted to go. And what got me is they refused to take anybody who was overseas. And they begged people who were in the States to go. Who's the figure? I had always really wanted to be an academy man.
Well, in this process, what awards did you, I know you had Purple Hearts.
Purple Hearts, I got Flying Crosses. Now there's two things about medals. One is 25L, which is a thing that took and made the Navy awards the same as the Air Force awards. That was 5 missions, an air medal, 20 missions, a DFC. And so it was strictly, how many missions you got? Well, I got 149 missions if you count them that way. If you want to say how many missions was there an exchange of ordnance, I'd say 100 missions. So 100 missions would be 20 air medals minus 5 DFCs. So I say I'm worth 5 DFCs and 16 air medals and 1 Purple Heart.
What did they give you?
Well, being that I left the ship by myself, I didn't join in all of the write-ups of the. So I missed all the awards from the Santee, which would be 80 missions, which would be 4 DFCs and.
And then on the second cruise, you didn't get anything either?
So I didn't get anything on the second cruise. Oh, I assume I have them. I don't care.
Oh, yeah, well, you did. The thing that's interesting to me is that
Yeah.
the Air Force gave out medals like they were candy.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just sad. Well,
My first air medal reads like I almost won the war single-handed. I mean, you had to have a good intelligence officer right up to, you know.
yeah. Now, it's okay. Barbers Point, your wife's there, your child's there.
Barbers Point of medals. I went out to everybody comes out for retreat formation. And this is my first time wearing my white uniform, which has a straight collar. And I was a 14.5 neck when I got it back at Corpus Christi. And I'm now 160 pounds and not 140. And so I'm in line, and I turn to the guy next to me and says, "Help me." And I crashed. Next week, retreat formation, my medals had arrived. Several of the other medals. And I got up there, and there's another couple of guys getting medals at the same time. And they're reading our names. And down the ranks you can hear, "Who's that guy?" "Oh, that's the drunk who messed up."
Oh, that's good.
So my reputation was established.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the truth doesn't hurt, does it? Now, So you don't then make it a career. You do get out.
I don't. They don't accept me.
Okay. Is any particular reason other than your health?
I have to guess.
Yeah.
You pick it. My health might have been it. My age. I was a little older than most of the fighter pilots. I was 22 when I went in, and a lot of people went in at 17, 18. You know, later on they were lowered the thing and extended the training period. I had less than a year training to fighting. Training period was 17 months later after that.
So you then get out of the Navy. Do they bring you back to the mainland before they?
Oh yes.
So you come back. Where do you get discharged?
Well, my wife was there, my kid, and they brought us back. We came on the APA Hayes, which was one of the President liners, which is one of the transport ships.
And you get out of the Navy and you do what?
I get out of the Navy and go to college. I get out of the Navy August 11th, and I'm in college September.
With what college?
UCLA, 1946.
And what subjects?
Engineering.
And you, having been away from studying, did you have any trouble jumping back into a?
Not really. I was a little more selective on what I studied hard and what I, passed over.
Mm-hmm. But in engineering at UCLA would have been a pretty good course.
Well, I didn't graduate UCLA. They didn't have a certification of engineers. So I had to go to Cal Berkeley my last year.
And
And that was a change of venue.
you're being polite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get an engineering degree in what is the degree in?
Electrical.
Electrical. And how do you use that?
Well, actually, I started out being a landscape engineer. I had an uncle that had a water sprinkler company, and I wanted to recover financially. And so other jobs were paying about $40 a week, and I could get $100 a week from him. So I did that for a while. And then I still went to school nights, taking advanced courses. And then an uncle who was a bank president, vice president, had a company that he dealt with called Schwinn Engineering. Now you're familiar with Schwinn Engineering. They built the turn and back indicators, and they built the vacuum control, because instruments used to be run by vacuum. Had a little vacuum collector out there. And so Schwinn was great for me. I took their tests, and since I was a servo mechanism major kind of guy, I was the only guy who got 100% on their tests, so I was a fair-haired boy from that point on. So I went from 275 a month to 150 a week in 6 months. My lung collapsed again. He paid my salary with overtime for 4 months, and I stayed working for him. I'd have gone through hell for that guy. He's really a terrific man. Anyway,
What was his name?
Schwinn, Nevin Schwinn, L. Nevin Schwinn.
S-W-A-I-N?
S-C-H.
S-C-H.
W-I-E-I-N.
And this is in LA?
This was in Los Angeles, yes.
Uh-huh. And so you're in a house with your boy and your wife, and you're going to school, and you're working for Schwinn
I'm on campus,
on campus. Okay.
17543 Strathmore.
And do you stay with that company or do you move on?
Well, he got into some kind of trouble with the OPA, which had nothing to do with me. I was then head of their quality control. And they thought maybe that I had information that would be detrimental to the company, so they let me go.
Now, OPA, I know what that is. Would you say what OPA means?
Oh, what did I say?
What does OPA stand for?
Office of Price Administration.
And he was then apparently,
He was pure as the driven snow, like I told you, the kind of man he was,
yeah.
but he couldn't risk it.
So then where'd you go?
So then I went back to Lockheed, and I helped open up their missile division. And I had the best job in the world. Read every technical magazine there is, and advise the engineers, and be the man between the engineers and the scientists. What the scientists needed to know in engineering, I would find the right man, and vice versa. If they needed a theoretical done on a job, I would find the right engineer or the right scientist. The scientists got together and left Lockheed and started a company that she became a secretary in. They were systems engineering at first, and then they became, and what was the name of that company, Linda?
Aerotronic.
Aeronutronics. And I didn't become a member of it. I would have liked to, but it didn't work out that way.
Now, at some point, did I hear right that your wife died, or?
Yes, she died of cancer after 38 years of marriage.
And
1982, January 5th.
And what company are you with at that time?
By that time I was with Hughes.
Hughes.
Yeah,
So-
I left Schween Engineering, went to Lockheed. Lockheed moved north, long thing. The Secretary of War didn't want things clustered too much in one locale, so they opened up Sunnyvale for Lockheed. I was the first guy with orders to go there, and my big mistake. My wife didn't want to leave her family, and I didn't go. But I'd have been a vice president of Lockheed without question.
Mm.
Things didn't work out that well. So then I went from Lockheed to a place called Brubaker. Brubaker had a lock on IFF, information, friend or foe, identification, friend or foe. And I became their head of quality control, and they wrote a book on a data package. The idea goes, it's not wartime, but it takes months and months and months and months to get a factory going. So what we would do, we would design the factory around certain special things like IFF. And we would set up the factory mentally and on paper, put it in a cave, maintain it, and then if should the war come and the nuclear age, we would haul it out, and within 3 months we would have somebody at full production building that. So I wrote the quality control portion of that. There was somebody for production control, for engineering, for everything in that.
Now, had they been involved, did you have YG in your Hellcats? And
Yes, I did.
had they designed and worked with YG, or did they just jump into IFF without any?
Well, this was IFF only, it was not
I turned it off.
YG. YG is land-based. ZB is aboard the ship.
Uh-huh.
I used the ZB to get in the ship.
But they had no previous experience when they went right into IFF? I mean,
Oh, this company?
yeah.
No, they were doing IFF, that's how they got the contract. This was called the data item. There had to be a data item, which was, in this case, the IFF. So we built a factory for real, using the data that we had developed.
Did it work okay?
Yeah, it worked fine.
Worked okay, huh?
Yeah.
And the time, and how old are you now, and where are you in your
Well, I'm 30.
30 years. Was you're just a kid still. God damn it.
Yeah, I graduated at 29.
What degree did you get?
Just a Bachelor of
Science.
Science
In engineering.
in engineering. Later on, I got a master's when I was 54
From where?
from Pepperdine
In what?
in business and management.
Excellent school.
It's kind of I call it my asbestos degree. It made me fireproof.
Well, did I hear it mentioned that your intelligence level was like 150 or 160? Was it?
145.
145, which is
pretty good.
It's pretty good. That beats digging holes.
Mhm.
And so you sound to me like you enjoyed schooling and learning and
Actually, I was a truant, and I went to several trade schools, we can call them. They were reform schools.
So what?
I was offered a scholarship to Caltech when I was in high school, or at least to pursue it. And I said, I've got 6 months here. I don't know what to do with. I said, you're off me 5 years more. But
So
that's the way it was.
when do you retire? At what age?
When I retired,
Yeah, what time were you? How old were you when you retired?
I was 83. No, excuse me, 63. It was in 83.
And so you retired at 63, and at what point are you no longer? You're a widower. When does that happen?
Let's see, I got married in 1990. So I was 70.
Okay, and and then you're by yourself after your wife dies.
Yeah.
Your son's out of the house.
Yes, I had a.
So what do you do?
Well, I did the wrong thing. I married the girl.
Your current wife.
Not this one. This
No.
one's a gem. This one. You can leave, and I'll tell good stories about you.
But you've been married once or twice? I mean, twice or just twice?
3 times.
Three
My first
times.
wife died of cancer.
Okay, so then there's a middle wife.
As a middle wife.
Any children?
Not from the middle. I had 2 children. My son, Michael, my daughter, Carol.
Okay, and Carol, is she still alive?
Michael was born right after the war, August 29th, 1945. And Carol was born August 2nd, 1950.
And is she still around?
Yes,
Where does she live?
she lives in Healdsburg.
And children?
She has one, Zoe.
One grandchild then.
Well, she has one, and my son had one, Michael.
Okay.
Had one called Zachary.
Now, how did your brothers do during the war? Did they all survive?
They all survived.
And they went on to careers after the war?
They went on to good careers.
One was in the movies.
One was in the movies. One was in the movies and dancing.
They had two brothers in the movies.
Yes.
And then,
And one was CPA and a tennis player.
okay. And
As a matter of fact, his tennis playing was so good it saved his life.
how?
He was in that V-12 program at the time of the Battle of the Bulge, and he was in a ping pong tournament with the commander. They were partners for duel, and they got the call to go, anybody breathing, go to the Battle of the Bulge. And so his whole unit was called up to the Battle of the Bulge, but his super wrote his papers so he could stay and play in the ping pong tournament. His unit was killed to a man,
Mm,
and he survived it.
it's something.
Is that lucky or what?
No? Yeah, not much you can do about it. You just take them as they come.
That was,
So, at some point, then you married the second wife, no children, that doesn't work, and
I get a divorce.
what happens after that?
Then I dated one gal for a few years, and then that didn't work out. I dated my friend here, and that's working out.
And you've been married how long to your third wife?
10 years.
10 years. And let me,
We've been married 10.
He doesn't mean
We know each other
Well-
15.
12 years. It'll be 12 years next month.
God, it seems like so fast.
do you
but we've been together 15.
have anything that we should have asked him that we missed, that you would like?
Nothing you could put on that video.
Okay. And then, in your military career, usually some things stick out above other things. Is there anything you remember that was funny or sad that you think back on?
Well, I told you the funniest one is a guy landing wheels up, or trying to land wheels up at Fort Island. What was funny?
I don't want you to stretch, but
I was in a
sometimes.
school play at Corpus Christi. The seniors had to put on a play, put on a vaudeville. So I have one line that I invented I'm very proud of. I said, "Be sure to inspect your plane before flying. Be certain you have a propeller. If you don't see it, feel for it."
Well, do you have any
He
questions?
has a poem he wrote.
A
I don't know
poem?
if you can recite it from memory.
Yeah, can you remember your poem that you
Oh, a
wrote?
few of them. I wrote them for everybody in the squadron. I only remember a few of them.
The one that we just got the other day from Crockett.
Oh, I'm not even sure I remember that wholly now. Condition 11. Are you familiar with Condition 11? Condition 11, 12, 13. Condition 11, enemy in the area, attack imminent. Condition 12, enemy in the area. And condition 13, quiet. Well, in condition 11, they take a pilot and sit him in the catapult, ready to go. So condition 11, which the pilots all hate, starts way before early, ends way after late. The pilots stand by, all dressed in full gear, in case that bogeys should be near. And then I went flat. I'll get a copy of it for you, though.
Okay. Jack, do you have any more questions?
Not really, it's
And then, of course, I had the pilots, Bob Ross, Bob Ross is our exec, and he's a total wreck. He lives in bars and smokes cigars and never pays the check. He was the executive officer. Then there was Colin Overland, who was a handsome guy. His nickname was Sexy. Sexy's our engineer. All husbands heat his fear. He'll steal a kiss and that and this, then exit through the rear. And similar.
I got a question. You've been very active and very busy in your life. You've done so
Yes.
many different things.
Yes, I have.
What haven't you done that you would always like to have been accomplished?
Well, I would have liked to stayed with Lockheed. I think that was a mistake.
Mhm.
And I would have liked to have been in full Navy to have gone to the academy.
Stayed in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But for what I haven't done, not much I'm looking for. Right now I'm in the best position. I'm a wonderful girl. And my kids are like, they're throwing a party for me in a couple of months.
And that is for
Being 90.
being 90. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, I'm the patriarch of my both families.
Perfect.
Do you have the opportunity to get with your brothers? Do you see them often?
No, I don't really.
Uh-huh.
My younger brother has trouble coping with things, so he keeps his world very small. And my other two brothers died in their 60s. My oldest brother and my second one.
Well,
It's been amazing.
Well, I'd like to thank you. You know,
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun reminiscing here.
yeah, well, your memory is incredible.
You did
Absolutely.
forget to mention that you also worked at North American, at Autonetics in Anaheim, and at Boeing. You worked at some other places.
Well, yeah, I've worked at, yeah, one of the things I've worked on, the Minuteman missile, the Polaris missile. I worked on it, go further back. You asked me what planes at Lockheed. I worked on the B-17G, or the F.
Where do you live now?
I live in Irvine.
And what do you do for fun?
I get up in the morning and the day just fills itself out.
Do you have any other interests?
My friend has things planned or unplanned, or thinks them up in the moment, and we just do them.
Do you get invited at all to talk to groups, you know, where you're the speaker?
I suppose I have an open invitation, but I haven't. I'll speak if somebody asks me, obviously.
He was docent at a museum for a while, the Science and
Yeah, I was a
Industry.
docent for 7 years at the Museum of Science and Industry in Los Angeles, down by the Coliseum.
Sure.
Yeah,
And he was an
That was-
active golfer until
fun to do,
health gave it.
as you know.
Do you play golf now?
No, I gave that up at 80. Some of
was
the
a
people I
hiker.
played with were gone, and it just wasn't.
He was a hiker for a while.
Did you have a low handicap?
My best handicap was about 12.
I think that's
Nothing.
pretty good.
It was pretty good for a weekend golfer.
Sure.
That's mine for 9.
We travel quite a bit.
Yeah,
Seeing relatives.
I've always enjoyed, in spite of what you heard from me, I've always enjoyed good health. Nothing hurts,
That's amazing.
nothing restricted. Now I've just gotten over a rare disease. I haven't gotten over the disease, but I've sort of conquered it. It's called achalasia. Never heard of it.
Achalasia.
Nobody else did either. You cannot swallow.
Oh, yes.
So I had a G-tube in me for a year, and
Oh,
I
wow.
was waiting to have it for another 10 years.
Yeah.
And a doctor said, I can cure you. So over here are 14,000 cans of Ensure, and over here is normal eating. So I said, I'll take it. Got to go ahead. And day after the operation, ready to go.
No problems.
That's great.
It's amazing.
Well, again, I want to thank you. It was very enlightening for me.
Well, good.
I'm going to turn the camera
Thank you
off.
for your service as well.
Well, like I said, the path of least resistance.
It was excellent.
Hell, he always says